Hello and welcome back. Or if this is your first time stumbling onto one of these videos, then hello and welcome in. Either way, get yourself comfortable. Pull the duvet up, dim your screen. Do whatever it is you do when you settle in for one of these. Tonight, we are going through 100 Easter eggs hidden across more than 24 seasons of Family Guy. 100 of them. Hidden references, background gags, voice cast secrets, in-jokes, banned episodes, animation tricks, the whole lot. And I should say up front, I am not going to be doing the obvious stuff. I am not going to spend 10 minutes telling you that Stewie has a posh English accent. We all know Stewie has a posh English accent. I am going to be doing the deeper stuff. The little background gags the animators slipped in at 2 in the morning, knowing that maybe 100 people on the planet would ever pause and find them. The references to Rhode Island that nobody outside of Providence ever spotted. The decisions voice actors made on a dare in 1998 that the show is still quietly paying off in 2026. Family Guy first aired on January 31st, 1999, right after Super Bowl XXIII, which is genuinely one of the better Super Bowl lead-ins any show has ever had. Roughly 22 million people watched the pilot, which for a brand new animated sitcom about a fat bloke in Rhode Island is a fairly mad number. Seth MacFarlane was 25 years old at the time. He had pitched a short pilot to Fox executives the previous May, and the whole thing was based on a couple of student animation shorts he had made at the Rhode Island School of Design when he was barely out of his teens. Fox liked what they saw. The show got picked up. It ran for 3 seasons. Then Fox killed it. Then DVDs sold like absolute mad, and Adult Swim picked up the reruns, and the show came back from the dead in 2005. And it has more or less just kept going ever since. We are now sitting on season 24. The show passed its 450th episode in February 2026. Fox renewed it through to the 2028 to 2029 season, so by the time it actually wraps up, assuming it ever wraps up, the show will have been on television for over 30 years. And every single one of those episodes contains background gags, hidden references, callbacks, and in-jokes that the writers and animators slipped into the margins, knowing that the vast majority of viewers were never going to notice. That is genuinely my favourite thing about this show. Not the cutaways, not the chicken fights. The fact that someone at Fuzzy Door Productions somewhere sat down and decided to spend an hour drawing a license plate that you would only ever see for half a second in the corner of a frame, and made sure that license plate said something funny. Nobody asked them to do that, they just did it. Right then, here is how this is going to go. I am going to walk you through all 100 Easter eggs, one at a time. They are roughly grouped by theme. The design DNA of the show, the intro sequence, the cancellation and revival story, the voice cast secrets, the crossovers, the Star Wars trilogy, background gags, banned episodes, recurring jokes, and the bits that did not fit anywhere else. But you do not need to remember any of it. You can drift in and drift out. Each one is its own little self-contained nugget. There is no payoff at the end. There is no big reveal. There is no number one that I am building toward. It is just 100 Family Guy facts in a calm voice for the next couple of hours. If you fall asleep on number 7, lovely, that is the whole point. If you make it to number 50, you are doing brilliantly. If you make it all the way to 100, then I genuinely admire your stamina, and you have earned my respect. Quick thing before we get into it, if you do enjoy this kind of long-form sleep content, hit subscribe. I know everyone on YouTube says that, and it does get exhausting to hear, but for what it is worth, this stuff genuinely does take ages to research and write. Going through episode by episode trivia, cross-checking which season a thing aired in, working out which writer wrote which episode, all of that, subscribing helps more than you would think. That is the whole pitch. No bell, no notifications, no follow me on Twitter. Just to subscribe if you fancy it, and we move on. A quick word about Family Guy itself before we start. The show has a reputation, as I'm sure you know. Some people love it. Some people genuinely cannot stand it. Some people loved it in 2007 and stopped watching in 2014 and have very strong opinions about the post-revival writing. I am not going to be litigating any of that tonight. I am not here to argue whether Family Guy is good or bad or whether the post-revival episodes hold up. I am just here to tell you the weird, brilliant, occasionally embarrassing things that have happened over the course of 3 decades of making this show. Some of it is impressive. Some of it is funny, some of it is genuinely strange, all of it is true. We are starting with the Easter eggs that have been hiding in the show's DNA since before it was even called Family Guy. The stuff that goes all the way back to 1995, when Family Guy was still 2 student films at art school. Stewie did not exist. Brian was called Steve. Peter was called Larry. The whole thing was a lot smaller and a lot rougher and a lot stranger, and somehow, every weird little decision MacFarlane made in those rough early shorts ended up baked into the show that millions of people now stream to fall asleep to. That is where this all begins, right? The DNA of Family Guy, where the show actually came from, what it originally was, and the little fingerprints from MacFarlane's early life that ended up quietly baked into the characters we now know. There is a lot here that has never really been part of the public conversation about this show, partly because most of it is not really hidden in any technical sense. It is just sitting in interviews and DVD commentaries that almost nobody actually listens to. Easter egg number 1. The first thing you have to understand about Family Guy is that it did not start as Family Guy. It started as 2 short student animation films called The Life of Larry and Steve. MacFarlane made them at the Rhode Island School of Design, which everyone in Providence just calls RISD, in 1995. He was barely out of his teens. The shorts featured a fat, dim-witted bloke called Larry, who is basically a rougher prototype of Peter. And Larry had a talking dog called Steve, who is basically a rougher prototype of Brian. When Fox eventually picked up the show, MacFarlane redesigned Larry into Peter and renamed Steve into Brian, and the rest of the family, Lois, Stewie, Chris, Meg, was built around that core duo. So if you ever wonder why Peter and Brian's chemistry feels fundamentally different to the chemistry between any other 2 characters on the show, it is because they actually are the original duo. They have been a unit since 1995. Everyone else in Quahog technically came later. Easter egg number 2. In May of 1998, MacFarlane went into a pitch meeting at Fox with what was reportedly a 7-minute pilot. Some sources put it at 15 minutes, so there is a bit of a discrepancy depending on where you read about it, but the 7-minute figure is the one most often cited. Either way, he was 25 years old. 25, pitching a fully animated comedy series to a major network. And the executives in the room were apparently sold on it almost immediately, partly because of the pitch itself, and partly because they had already seen what he could do in those Rhode Island student shorts. The whole show got greenlit on the strength of about an hour of footage that was made by one bloke and his mates at art college, which, when you think about how much development hell most network shows go through these days, is genuinely a bit mental. Easter egg number 3. This is one of my favourite bits of trivia about the whole show. MacFarlane has said in interviews that Peter Griffin's voice is based on a security guard he overheard while he was studying at RISD. Just some bloke working a security shift in Providence, whose voice MacFarlane found funny enough to remember, and then replicate years later in a cartoon. That guard never got credited. He probably still does not know that one of the most recognisable voices in modern American animation is essentially him. Whoever you are, mate, you accidentally made television history while doing your night shift in 1994 or 1995. There has got to be a man in his 60s, somewhere in Rhode Island, watching Family Guy and thinking, hang on, that sounds suspiciously like me. I genuinely hope he gets the credit eventually. Easter egg number 4. Stewie's accent did not come out of nowhere. MacFarlane has been quite open about the fact that he based the voice on Rex Harrison, the English actor best known for playing Henry Higgins in the 1964 musical film My Fair Lady. Specifically, he was channeling the slightly clipped, slightly pompous, slightly aristocratic delivery that Harrison brought to that role. So when you listen to Stewie monologuing about world domination, or insulting Brian's writing, or rolling his eyes at Lois, what you are actually hearing is a slightly cartoonish impression of an English actor's musical theatre performance from the 1960s. There is also a fair bit of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons in there, which MacFarlane has acknowledged as a secondary influence, particularly the deeper, raspy register Stewie sometimes drops into when he is being properly evil. Two iconic posh villain voices blended together, performed by an American man pretending to be both. The whole vocabulary of "What the deuce" and "Victory shall be mine" is basically a love letter to mid-century British actors playing fancy villains. Easter egg number 5. Quagmire's voice is one of the most distinctive in the show, and almost nobody can pin down what it actually is. The answer is that it is not a person at all. It is a sound. MacFarlane has said the voice was modelled on the cadence of 1940s and 1950s radio commercial announcers. Those fast-talking, slightly nasal, slightly old-fashioned blokes who used to read out adverts on the wireless back before television really took over. So Quagmire sounds like a vintage radio advert because he basically is one. That is also why he can deliver a line like "giggity" at 3 different speeds in the same scene without it ever sounding wrong. The source material was built around delivery, not character. It also explains why Quagmire's voice has barely changed in over 20 years. The reference point is fixed in time. Easter egg number 6. Here is the one that throws people when they hear it. Brian Griffin's voice is not really a character voice. It is essentially just Seth MacFarlane's regular speaking voice. No accent, no affectation, no comedy register. Brian is, vocally speaking, the most undisguised version of MacFarlane that appears anywhere in his work. So when you watch interviews with MacFarlane and you find yourself thinking, he sounds a lot like Brian, that is not because Brian sounds like him, it is because he literally is talking as Brian. The most human character on the show is voiced in the most natural way. It is also probably part of why Brian tends to get so many of the show's serious monologues. The speeches about politics or love or mortality that Family Guy occasionally throws in to remind you it can do that. He is the easiest character for MacFarlane to drop the comedy out of, because he is barely a character to begin with. He is the creator's voice, with a dog's body drawn around it. Easter egg number 7. This one is brilliant and a bit dark and very Family Guy. When Seth Green auditioned for the role of Chris, a mate of his apparently dared him to do the audition in his Buffalo Bill voice. Buffalo Bill being the serial killer from The Silence of the Lambs. Specifically, the voice Bill uses in the famous Goodbye Horses scene where he is dancing in front of the camcorder. Green went into the room and did the audition in that voice. The casting team loved it. He got the part. Chris's voice has been a Buffalo Bill impression for the entire run of the show, which means every time you have heard Chris say anything ever, you have technically been listening to a serial killer impression done by Seth Green. And the writers eventually paid this off in a season 7 episode where Chris gets exposed for doing the exact same Buffalo Bill dance in his bedroom in front of his camcorder. Connie D'Amico, the popular girl at school, shows the video at a party to humiliate him. The whole gag is a callback to the audition that won Seth Green the role in the first place. Most viewers laugh at it as a Silence of the Lambs reference and never realise the joke is actually about how the character was created, layered to a slightly absurd degree. Easter egg number 8. The Griffin family lives at 31 Spooner Street, which is constantly mentioned but almost never picked apart. The thing is, Spooner Street is not made up. There is a real Spooner Street in Providence, Rhode Island, just immediately west of Roger Williams Park. People have actually gone there and stood outside number 31 to take pictures. MacFarlane has said in DVD commentary that the name comes from Spooner Hill Road, which is apparently the road his boyhood home was on. So 31 Spooner Street is essentially a tribute to where MacFarlane grew up, dropped into the cartoon as a fictional address. There is also some debate about whether the name actually came from a Family Guy producer called Mike Spooner, but the MacFarlane explanation is the one most often cited and probably the more reliable one, given that he has said it on camera. Either way, the address is not random. It means something. The Griffin family lives in spirit at MacFarlane's childhood postcode. Easter egg number 9. Whenever the show does an exterior shot of Quahog, you can usually see 3 buildings, off in the distance behind the Griffin house. Those buildings are not made up. They are the actual Providence skyline. From left to right, they are One Financial Plaza, 50 Kennedy Plaza, and the Industrial National Bank building, which gets called the Bank of America Tower in some sources. They are drawn in the correct order, at the correct angle, viewed from the correct side of the city. And from that angle, Quahog has to be sitting somewhere west of downtown Providence, which is part of why the show keeps placing it near Cranston, Johnston, North Providence, or Situate, depending on which writer is on duty that week. MacFarlane confirmed in an interview with Providence's Fox affiliate that the town is modelled on Cranston specifically. So the animators have been doing quietly accurate, geographically correct location work in a cartoon since 1999. Loads of fans never noticed it. Loads of Rhode Islanders did. Easter egg number 10. This one I love. If you look at maps of Quahog that have appeared in various episodes, one of the streets near Spooner Street is labelled MacFarlane, which is, obviously, a phonetic version of MacFarlane. The creator of the show has signed his name into the map of his fictional town and put it on a street 1 block over from where the Griffin family lives. It is essentially the cartographic equivalent of an autograph, and it has been sitting there in the background of episodes for years. If you ever pause on a Quahog map and your eye drifts away from Spooner Street, you can spot it. Most viewers never have. Most viewers will never have a reason to, but it is there. So that is 10. 10 facts about where Family Guy actually came from, and the bits of MacFarlane's life that ended up baked into the show without anyone really clocking them. Most of those have been sitting in plain sight since 1999, and almost nobody has ever properly stopped to look at them. Right, now we are going to talk about something you've watched probably 1,000 times without ever really paying attention to it. The intro. Okay, so the intro, roughly 40 seconds, you have probably watched several thousand times if you are a regular viewer. Lois at the piano, Peter doing the chorus, Stewie's laugh and cry beat at the end, then the family doing the dance number and settling on the couch. It is one of the most familiar pieces of animated television in the world, and there is genuinely more going on in it than almost anyone bothers to notice. Some of this is technical, some of it is musical, some of it is just a writer's room joke that survived for 25 years because nobody ever bothered to remove it. Easter egg number 11. The whole opening sequence is a direct parody of All in the Family. That is the show MacFarlane is referencing. All in the Family ran from 1971 to 1979, and its opening was Archie and Edith Bunker sitting at a piano, singing a duet about how things were better in the good old days. Boy, the way Glenn Miller played. That whole bit. Family Guy's intro takes the exact same setup, husband and wife at a piano lamenting modern times, and just transposes it to the Griffin family. Lois plays Edith, Peter plays Archie, and the lyrics about violence and movies and sex on TV are essentially the exact same complaint Archie was making 50 years earlier on primetime American television. The whole show, in some ways, is built on top of that joke, a nostalgic, conservative, working-class American sitcom skeleton with Family Guy's nonsense draped over it. The intro is Family Guy quietly admitting where it comes from before each episode even starts. Almost nobody under 35 would clock the reference, which is part of why it has aged so well. Easter egg number 12. This is one that fans only really started spotting once HD became standard. The sheet music on Lois's piano during the intro, the page she is supposedly playing from, is the actual sheet music for the Family Guy theme. Walter Murphy's composition, transcribed and visible. It is not a placeholder. It is not random scribbles drawn in to look like notation. If you paused the intro on a high-definition broadcast and zoomed in, you could presumably read it well enough to play along. The animators went to the trouble of getting the actual sheet music onto the page, even though, in 1999 standard definition, basically nobody on Earth would ever be able to see what was written on it. They did it for the maybe 12 people who would eventually own televisions sharp enough to find out. That is a really specific kind of dedication. Easter egg number 13. Walter Murphy has been the composer for Family Guy since the very beginning. He wrote the theme, he has scored the bulk of the show's run, and the thing he has said about his approach is that he treats Family Guy musically the way old Hollywood used to score serious films. Full orchestra, big band swing, traditional Broadway aesthetics, sincere, cinematic, lush. He is essentially taking a cartoon about a fat man strangling his son and scoring it as if it were Casablanca. That dissonance between the sincere musicianship and the absolutely absurd content is a huge part of what makes Family Guy feel different from other adult cartoons. It is musically posh, it is taking itself seriously in a way the writing never does. And it is also why the show's musical numbers tend to land so much harder than you would expect them to. They are being written and orchestrated by people who actually know what they're doing. Murphy is the reason a Family Guy song about Peter being given AIDS by a doctor sounds like a proper Broadway showstopper instead of a joke. Easter egg number 14. In 2002, MacLeod and Walter Murphy won the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Music and Lyrics. The song was called You've Got a Lot to See, and it appeared in a Season 3 episode. Most casual fans cannot name it. It is not Shy Poopy or You Have AIDS or any of the more famous Family Guy musical numbers. It is just a quiet, well-crafted little tune that the Television Academy thought was good enough to win an Emmy for. The show has won a fair number of Emmys over the years, somewhere around 9 wins out of 32 nominations, mostly in voice acting and individual animation categories. But that 2002 music win is one of the earliest. It set the tone for the show's ongoing relationship with the music branch of the Academy. Family Guy songs have been getting respect from professional songwriters for a very long time, even when the rest of the show was being absolutely hammered by critics. Murphy and MacLeod are also Grammy nominees, by the way, for Christmas Time is Killing Us, which is a fairly impressive sentence to read about a song from a cartoon. Easter egg number 15. Walter Murphy is not the only composer on the show. Ron Jones co-composed Family Guy from Season 1 through Season 12, 12 seasons. That is essentially the bulk of the show's classic era. If you have a favourite moment of incidental music from a Stewie evil genius monologue in Season 4, or a slow burn emotional beat in Season 7, or basically any of the more cinematic music cues in the post-revival run, there is a reasonable chance Ron Jones was at least partially responsible for it. He's one of those creative figures who is enormously important to the texture of a show without ever really being a household name. And the fact that the show had 2 full-time composers operating with a proper orchestra for over a decade is part of why Family Guy actually sounds like it does. Most cartoons do not get that kind of musical infrastructure. Most cartoons get 1 composer with a synthesizer and a deadline. Family Guy got 2 composers and a 40-piece orchestra. It really shows. Easter egg number 16. The dance number at the end of the intro, where the Griffin family appears on stage and runs through their little choreographed sequence before settling on the couch. That whole thing is animated as a single continuous shot. There are no edits in there. The camera tracks across the family without cutting, which sounds simple if you have never animated anything, but is actually a fairly hard thing to pull off cleanly in a hand-drawn 2D style. Continuous shots are the kind of thing prestige live-action shows like to brag about. Family Guy quietly does it in the opening of every single episode 16 million times a week in syndication, and never makes a big deal about it. You watch it 3,000 times across your life, and you never stop to think about how technically tidy it actually is. Animators are showing off, and you're too sleepy to notice, which, fair enough. Easter egg number 17. Family Guy switched to widescreen 16.9 high definition in Season 9, with the premiere And Then There Were Fewer on September 26, 2010. And when they made that switch, the intro had to be redrawn. The old 4:3 standard definition intro from 1999 just did not work in widescreen. The new version is broadly the same. Same composition, same beats, same family, but the colours are slightly more saturated, the line work is a bit cleaner, the building behind the family during the dance number has slightly different details, and the framing has been adjusted to fill the wider aspect ratio. If you re-watch a Season 1 episode, and then immediately watch a Season 10 episode, the intros do not quite match. There is a very subtle visual upgrade that happened in the middle of the show's run that almost nobody really registered, because by the time it happened, most people had stopped watching the intro consciously and were just letting it play while they made tea. The animators registered it though. They are the ones who had to redraw the whole thing. Easter egg number 18. In 2024, Family Guy released a 25th anniversary musical EP digitally. It contained You Have AIDS, Shipoopy, Prom Night Dumpster Baby, and a few other fan favourites from the show's musical history. Which means there are now Family Guy songs that you can put on a music streaming app and listen to as a normal music experience, divorced entirely from the show. Some of them are weirdly, genuinely good as standalone songs, partly because of Murphy's orchestrations and partly because MacFarlane is, underneath everything else, a properly trained musical theatre performer. The man can sing. He has released full albums of standards. He has performed with full orchestras at the Royal Albert Hall. The Family Guy musical numbers are not just gags with a tune attached. They are showcase moments for a creator who is genuinely talented at this specific thing and just happens to have hidden a lot of it inside a cartoon about a Rhode Island family. Easter egg number 19. Across the run of Family Guy, MacFarlane has voiced over 700 distinct characters. 700. That is the figure that gets quoted in profiles. If you think about how many one-off characters appear in a single episode of Family Guy, random news reporters, neighbours, walk-on cameos, talking objects, historical figures in cutaways, parodies of real celebrities, the number adds up faster than you would expect. He has voiced founding fathers. He has voiced talking food. He has voiced God. He has voiced versions of himself. He has voiced people he has known in real life. Most actors, even very prolific ones, finish their careers having played maybe 50 or 60 distinct roles. MacFarlane hits that number per season. There is genuinely no comparable figure in voice acting outside of someone like Mel Blanc, who did all the original Looney Tunes voices for decades, and even Blanc was not voicing 700 characters across one show. The volume is fairly difficult to comprehend. Easter egg number 20. This is a fun one to sit with. Whenever Peter and Stewie are on screen together, having an argument or a conversation, and there are hundreds of those scenes, what you are watching is one man performing both voices. MacFarlane voices Peter, Stewie, and Brian. So a Griffin family argument where Peter shouts at Stewie and Stewie monologues back at him is basically MacFarlane sitting in a recording booth shouting at himself in two different accents. Same goes for any scene where Brian and Stewie talk to each other, which is the show's most famous duo dynamic. The Brian and Stewie episodes that fans rate as the greatest in the entire run are technically one bloke, two microphones, two voices, having a sustained conversation with himself. Once you know that, you cannot really unhear it. You start to notice the rhythm of how the lines bounce off each other, and you realise it is the rhythm of one person's brain working out a dialogue with itself. The whole core of Family Guy is technically a one-man show that just happens to have a cast of 70 people around the edges. Mila Kunis, Alex Borstein, Seth Green, Patrick Warburton, they are all very important. But the engine of the show is one person doing voices in a booth in Los Angeles. So that is the intro, and a few things adjacent to it. Walter Murphy is genuinely one of the unsung heroes of this whole production, by the way. If anyone deserves more public recognition for what they have contributed to Family Guy, it is honestly the composers. They have been doing very high quality work in the background of a show that does not get a lot of credit for high quality anything. Right, now we are going to talk about the single most important thing that ever happened to Family Guy, which is that the show almost did not keep happening at all, and the reason it kept happening involves a hangover, a wrong departure time, and the worst day in modern American history. Right, so the next 12 are about the single most consequential set of events that ever happened to this show. It is honestly one of the strangest origin stories in modern television, because the thing that saved Family Guy from being a forgotten 3-season cartoon was a combination of a hangover, a typo on a travel itinerary, and one of the worst days in American history. There is not really a graceful way to set that up, so I am just going to tell it the way it actually happened, calmly, in order. Easter egg number 21. On the evening of September 10th, 2001, Seth MacFarlane was in Rhode Island. He had gone back to his alma mater, RISD, to give a lecture. He was 28 years old at this point, well into the Family Guy run, and apparently happy to come back to Providence and talk to the next generation of art students. After the lecture, he went out for drinks with some of the faculty. He stayed out late. He had a few too many. He woke up the next morning with a fairly serious hangover. He was booked that morning on American Airlines Flight 11, leaving Boston's Logan International Airport, bound for Los Angeles. Easter egg number 22. Here is the bit that genuinely just sits with you. MacFarlane's travel agent had listed the departure time on his itinerary as roughly 10 to 15 minutes later than it actually was. So between the hangover and the incorrect time on his paperwork, MacFarlane was running late for a flight that was already running ahead of where he thought it was. This is genuinely the kind of detail you would not put in a film because it would feel too contrived. It is one of those situations where every individual element is small and stupid and ordinary, and the sum of them ends up being the difference between life and death. Easter egg number 23. When MacFarlane arrived at Logan, he went up to the counter and told the woman he was booked on Flight 11. She told him he was too late. The gate had just closed. He could not board. He took it in stride because at that point it was a normal travel inconvenience. He asked to be rebooked on the next available flight, which was leaving a couple of hours later. He walked into the airport lounge, sat down in a chair, and fell asleep. Easter egg number 24. MacFarlane woke up roughly 45 minutes later to the sound of commotion around him. The first plane had hit the World Trade Center. He sat there in the lounge and watched on the television monitors as the second plane struck the South Tower. And then the news broadcasts announced which flight had hit the North Tower. It was American Airlines Flight 11, the flight he had been booked on, the flight he had missed by minutes because he drank too much the night before, and his travel agent had written down the wrong departure time. 81 passengers were on that flight. 11 crew members. Every person on board was killed. MacFarlane did not really talk about it publicly for years. When he eventually did, in a 2009 interview with Howard Stern, he was fairly measured. He said it rattled him for the first few weeks, but that he had not really thought about it much after that, which is one of those answers that is either incredibly resilient or incredibly compartmentalized, and possibly both. Easter egg number 25. Now here is where the story bends into the show's actual fate. Family Guy was already on the brink at this point. Fox had announced cancellation back in May of 2000, after season 2 had finished. They had reversed it almost immediately and ordered 13 more episodes for what became season 3, but the ratings on Thursdays were not good. The show was getting hammered in its time slot against ER on NBC and Survivor on CBS, which were two of the biggest shows on television at the time. By 2002, the writing was on the wall. Fox officially cancelled the show on May 15th of that year, when their fall lineup was unveiled and Family Guy was simply not on it. It had been 3 seasons. It looked like that was the end. Easter egg number 26. When the show was cancelled, there was actually one finished episode that had not been broadcast yet. It just sat there. Fox would not air it. The episode eventually premiered on Adult Swim on November 9th, 2003, more than a year and a half after the show had been cancelled. So technically, the very last episode of original Family Guy from its first run was a Cartoon Network broadcast on a different network entirely, in the middle of the night, when most of the original audience had already moved on. It is a fairly grim way to wrap up a sitcom that had once pulled in tens of millions of viewers off a Super Bowl lead-in. Easter egg number 27. Once Family Guy was officially dead, Fox tried to sell the rerun rights. Nobody wanted them. Multiple networks passed. The show was not seen as having any commercial future. Cartoon Network eventually picked up the rights for what the president of 20th Century Fox Television described as basically nothing. The exact figure has never been made public, but the wording every time it has come up in interviews is some version of "we paid almost nothing." So the show that ended up reviving the entire concept of network animation in the 2000s was acquired for less than a single one of its episodes had cost to make. The financial gap between what they paid and what it ended up generating is one of those numbers that probably traumatizes a Cartoon Network executive somewhere whenever they think about it. Easter egg number 28. Cartoon Network started airing Family Guy reruns on Adult Swim, their late-night animation block, on April 20th, 2003. The results were immediate and, frankly, a bit ridiculous. Family Guy became Adult Swim's #1 program, more or less overnight. Viewership for the entire late-night block jumped by 239%. The show was averaging 1.9 million viewers per episode in a late-night cable time slot, which is a number that most primetime network shows in the early 2000s would have killed for. Adult Swim went from being a niche cult thing for stoned college students to being a genuine ratings competitor in the basic cable space, almost entirely on the back of one cancelled cartoon. Easter egg number 29. Right at the same time the Adult Swim reruns were taking off, Fox released the first DVD volume of Family Guy, which contained seasons 1 and 2 in one boxed set. That release sold roughly 400,000 copies in the first month. It eventually sold 2.2 million copies in total, becoming the best-selling television DVD of 2003 and the second highest-selling television DVD of all time at that point, behind only the first season of Chappelle's Show. To put that in context, that is more copies than most theatrical films sold on home video in the same period. People were buying a cancelled cartoon as a Christmas present. The audience had been there the entire time. Fox had just been actively hiding it behind time slot changes and bad scheduling decisions for 3 solid years. Easter egg number 30. The DVD success was not a one-off. The Season 3 DVD release, which came out a bit later, also sold over 1 million copies on its own. So you had 2 consecutive Family Guy DVD sets, each clearing 7 figures in unit sales, while the show was technically a defunct property. At which point, Fox executives presumably started having very long meetings about what they had just done. Cancelling a show is one thing. Cancelling a show that was apparently selling more copies on disc than most active series was managing was a slightly different and slightly more embarrassing situation. Easter egg number 31. On May 20th, 2004, Fox did something that had not really been done before. They ordered 35 new episodes of a cancelled animated series purely on the strength of DVD sales and cable rerun ratings. Family Guy became the first television series in history to be revived by the same network that had cancelled it, based primarily on home video performance. Every show that has been saved by the fans since, every Brooklyn Nine-Nine, every Lucifer, every show that got picked up by Netflix or Amazon after a cancellation, owes some part of its existence to the precedent Family Guy set in 2004. Fox basically had to admit they had been wrong and then write a very large check to MacFarlane to make up for it. He, by all accounts, did not gloat. He just got back to work. Easter egg number 32. The revival premiere aired on May 1st, 2005. The episode was called North by North Quahog. It was directed by Peter Shin, and it eventually won Shin an Annie Award for directing. The episode itself opens with Peter announcing to the family that the show has been cancelled, and then announcing that it has been brought back, and then listing off a litany of other Fox shows that had not been so lucky. Properties like Dark Angel Titus, Undeclared, Action, That 80s Show, Wonderfalls, Fastlane, Andy Richter Controls the Universe, Skin Girls Club, Cracking Up, The Pits, Firefly, and The Tick. It is one of the more unusual cold opens in television history. A revived show paying its respects to all the other shows that died around it. A bit dark when you actually think about it. Very Family Guy. So that is the cancellation and revival, beat by beat, which is genuinely an extraordinary set of circumstances when you lay it out in order. Imagine telling someone in 2002 that the show they had just cancelled would, within 4 years, be back on the air, more popular than ever, kicking off an unbroken run that would last another 2 decades. They would have laughed at you. Anyway, now we are heading back into Quahog itself, because the town the show is set in is a quiet, persistent love letter to Rhode Island, and almost nobody outside of Providence has ever properly spotted just how much of it is real. So, Quahog, the fictional Rhode Island town the show is set in. We have already touched on a couple of bits, Spooner Street being real, the Providence skyline behind the house, MacFarlane on the map. But there is loads more in there. The whole town is essentially MacFarlane's love letter to the state he went to art school in, and almost every named location has some sort of real-world reference baked into it. Most of them only make sense if you actually grew up in Rhode Island or did time in Providence yourself, which is a fairly small overlap with the show's audience, but the writers put them in anyway. Easter egg number 33. MacFarlane has confirmed in an interview with Providence's Fox affiliate WMAC-TV that Quahog is modelled on Cranston, Rhode Island. That is the canonical answer. But here is the funny thing about that. The show has been remarkably inconsistent about it. Various episodes have placed Quahog in Johnston, North Providence, Scituate, Tiverton, somewhere between Cranston and Warwick, or just vaguely west of downtown Providence. In E Peterbus Unum, there is a map of Rhode Island shown on screen with Quahog shaded in red, and it is sitting near Tiverton, which is on the opposite side of the state from Cranston. In Not All Dogs Go to Heaven, the zoom out at the end places Quahog almost directly north of the Theodore Francis Green Airport, which is actually in Warwick. The show genuinely cannot keep its own geography straight, which is fine. It is a cartoon. But it does mean that Quahog is technically in 5 or 6 different places at the same time, depending on which writer was at their desk that week. Cranston is the closest thing to an official answer. Everything else is just creative. Easter egg number 34. The fictional beer Peter drinks at the Drunken Clam is called Pawtucket Patriot Ale, brewed at the Pawtucket Brewery. Pawtucket is a real city in Rhode Island, just north of Providence. And there is a properly weird origin story to why the show ended up with a fictional beer based on an actual Rhode Island city. Family Guy producer Danny Smith has explained it in interviews. Years before Family Guy, Smith was writing for a sitcom called Nurses, and he wrote a joke that mentioned Pawtucket. Just a throwaway joke, but a lot of people in Pawtucket apparently took it seriously, including the actual mayor of Pawtucket, and Smith said he ended up vilified on local talk radio for it. He had visions, in his words, of people from Pawtucket chasing him down Benefit Street with pitchforks and torches. So when MacFarlane pitched the idea of setting Family Guy in Rhode Island, Smith insisted the town had to be fictional. He did not want another real town deciding to come for him. Quahog exists, in some sense, because Danny Smith was once mildly bullied by Pawtucket. The whole town is a defensive measure dressed up as a fictional setting. Easter egg number 35. Chris and Meg's middle school, in early seasons of Family Guy, is called Buddy Cianci Junior High. Buddy Cianci was an actual real person who I had never heard of before researching this video. He was the mayor of Providence twice, served 2 non-consecutive terms, and went to federal prison both times. Once for assault, once for racketeering and conspiracy. He was, by the standards of American local politics, a genuinely flamboyant villain. He also remained personally popular in Providence right up until his death in 2016, partly because he was charismatic, and partly because Rhode Island has a certain enduring affection for charismatic crooks, and Family Guy named the children's middle school after him. A cartoon kids' school is named after a man who served time in a federal penitentiary on 2 separate occasions. That is the kind of inside joke that absolutely lands if you are from Providence and absolutely flies past you if you're not. Easter egg number 36. The high school Chris and Meg attend through most of Family Guy is named James Woods Regional High School. James Woods, the actor, actually grew up in Warwick, Rhode Island. So the school is, on one level, named after a famous Rhode Island native. But it is also more layered than that because James Woods himself has appeared as a recurring character on Family Guy, voiced by the real James Woods, playing a fictionalized version of himself, often as an antagonist. There is an episode where Peter literally drags Woods into a town meeting to prevent the school from being renamed. So you have got James Woods, the actor, voicing a fictional version of James Woods, who is being honoured by a high school named after the real James Woods, whose fictional version is then trying to keep the school named after himself. The recursion gets properly elaborate if you stop and think about it. Most viewers do not. Easter egg number 37. In the season 17 episode, Adam West High, James Woods Regional High School gets officially renamed to Adam West High School. This was done as a tribute to Adam West, the actor, who voiced Mayor Adam West on the show for over 15 years and who had died in real life on June 9, 2017. The renaming happens within the show as a piece of in-fiction memorialization. James Woods, in character, complains about it. The school stays renamed, which means the high school in Quahog has now had 2 different names across the run, both based on real celebrities with Rhode Island connections, and the change happened in fiction because one of those celebrities had actually passed away in real life. Most cartoons do not do this. Most cartoons keep the high school name the same thing for 30 years. Family Guy quietly updates its world to match what has happened outside the show, and almost nobody outside of devoted fans ever comments on it. Easter egg number 38. The local elementary school in Quahog is called Martin Mull Elementary. Martin Mull was a comedian and actor who, like McFarlane, was a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design. He is a fellow RISD alumnus. The elementary school is essentially a tribute to one of McFarlane's predecessors at his art school. So you've got a kids' school in a fictional Rhode Island town named after a real comedian who went to the same college as the show's creator decades earlier. That is a hyper-specific tribute that probably maybe a few hundred people in the world would catch on first viewing. Mull passed away in 2024, so the tribute is now also a quiet bit of ongoing memorial. The show has been gently honouring Mull in its background ever since 1999, and most people had no idea why. Easter egg number 39. The Drunken Clam is the local pub on Family Guy. Peter and the lads drink there. It is named after the Quahog, which is the local Rhode Island clam variety that the town itself is also named after. But in the season 17 episode Heartburn, there is a Romeo and Juliet parody segment set in Elizabethan times, and the Drunken Clam appears in a period-appropriate Shakespearean version called Yesauzid Mackerel, which is, when you think about it, just a Shakespearean translation of Drunken Clam, with the proper grammar and period spelling. the animators bothered to come up with an Old English version of a fictional pub for a flashback gag that lasts maybe 30 seconds on screen. It is the kind of detail that adds nothing to the joke, and was clearly just done because someone in the writer's room thought it was funny. Deeply unnecessary, in the best possible way. Easter egg number 40. So we already know the family lives at 31 Spooner Street, and we already covered that this is an established canonical address that gets stated in multiple episodes. But here is a slightly weird thing the show never really bothered to fix. In the early episode, Brian Portrait of a Dog, when Peter writes a fan letter to the action hero MacGyver, the return address on the envelope reads 725 Spooner Street. Not 31, either the Griffin family used to live at a completely different number on the same street and quietly moved at some point off-screen, or the animators, in early season 1, had not yet locked down the address. Continuity errors in long-running cartoons are not unusual, but this one stuck around in the episode, and you can still see it on streaming. The Griffin house has technically had 2 addresses over the show's run, and nobody at Fox ever went back to fix the early one. It is just there. A little inconsistency sitting in the background. Easter egg number 41. The Quahog zip code, as established in the season 7 episode Foxy Lady, is .093, which sounds normal until you actually look up Rhode Island zip codes. Real Rhode Island zips all start with 02, in the 02800 to 02900 range, roughly. The 020 range is reserved by the United States Postal Service for things like military bases overseas, US territories, and certain Federal Reserve operations. There is no civilian American town with a 0093 zip code, so Quahog is, technically and bureaucratically, completely off the grid. The town does not exist within the standard postal system at all, which is a fairly neat little world-building joke for a show that basically never bothers with real-world consistency. The animators just made up a zip code that could not possibly belong to anywhere real, almost certainly without actually realising they had done it. The number is just unaddressable mail. Easter egg number 42. The Blackstone Valley Tourism Council in Rhode Island, which is a real local tourism organisation, actually created a Family Guy walking tour of Providence at some point. According to Boston.com's reporting, you can go there now and follow a marked route that takes in real-world locations that match the show's references. The actual Spooner Street, the buildings in the Providence skyline that show up behind the Griffin house, the parts of the city connected to the various RRS references. It is a legitimate piece of regional tourism infrastructure built around a cartoon about a fat man strangling his son in a fictional suburb. Family Guy is now part of Rhode Island's official tourist identity in a small but real way. The state is using a 25-year-old animated sitcom to bring people in, which is a sentence I genuinely never thought I would write down. So that is Quahog, 10 little local references that do, when you add them up, quietly tell the story of one bloke who went to art school in Providence in the 1990s and has been finding ways to honour that experience in his cartoon ever since. The whole town is essentially McFarlane's nostalgic personal map of his time at RISD, redrawn as a sitcom backdrop. Anyway, now we are going to talk about the people behind the voices, the recasts, the tragedies, the ones who left, the ones who stayed, and a couple of casting decisions that are weirder than you would think. So we have already covered the McFarlane stuff. Peter, Brian, Stewie, Quagmire, all him. But there are 6 other major voices on the main cast and a long list of recurring characters voiced by other actors. And the casting story behind those is genuinely fascinating. Some of it is sad, some of it is funny. Most of it has never really been part of the public conversation about the show. Easter egg number 43. Meg Griffin was originally voiced by Lacey Chabert, the actress who at the time was best known for playing Claudia in Party of 5. Chabert voiced Meg for the first 7 to 9 episodes of Season 1. There is a slight discrepancy on the exact number depending on the source, but it sits somewhere in that range. She left because of scheduling conflicts. She was a teenager, she was still in school, she was working full-time on Party of Five. Voicing a third project was just not feasible. So Meg got recast. Most viewers do not remember Chabert as Meg at all, because Mila Kunis has now been doing the voice for so much longer. But if you go back to those early season 1 episodes, you can hear a slightly different Meg. A bit higher, a bit more conventionally feminine. The character does not fully sound like Meg yet because Meg has not yet become Meg. She arrives in the role gradually. Easter egg number 44. Mila Kunis took over Meg in season 2, starting with the episode Da Boom, although one source places the changeover at the end of season 1, around episode 10. Either way, it was very early in the run. The detail that gets less attention is that Kunis had originally auditioned for the role earlier and been told to come back when her voice was more developed. She had only just turned 14. The casting team asked her to come back later. She did. She got the part the second time around. She has now been voicing Meg for over 25 years. She has won awards for it. She has built an entire film career around the side of doing it. Meg's voice is, at this point, completely inseparable from Mila Kunis. If Family Guy ever recasts Meg again, it will be a properly weird transition for fans, because 2.5 decades of brain wiring will need to be rewritten. Easter egg number 45. Cleveland Brown, Peter's neighbour and friend, was originally voiced by Mike Henry from the very first episode in 1999. Henry voiced him for over 300 episodes across more than 2 decades. He also voiced him for the entire run of the spin-off series, The Cleveland Show, which ran from 2009 to 2013 and produced 88 episodes. So Mike Henry has done somewhere north of 400 episodes of Cleveland Brown across 2 different shows. He also voices Herbert, the elderly creep neighbour, and a handful of other recurring characters. Henry was a writer on Family Guy. As well as a voice actor, he co-created The Cleveland Show, and he was, for over 20 years, a properly central creative figure on the production. Most people just thought of him as the bloke who does Cleveland. Easter egg number 46. On June 26, 2020, Mike Henry stepped down from the role of Cleveland. He posted a public statement saying that persons of colour should play characters of colour. The decision was made in the context of broader cultural conversations happening that summer about voice acting and representation. On September 25th, 2020, Arif Zahir was announced as Cleveland's new voice. He took over starting in season 20. Zahir had been a YouTube voice impressionist. He had built a small online following doing impressions, and one of his impressions was specifically of Cleveland. The casting team noticed him through that, so someone went from doing voice work for free on the internet to voicing one of the most established characters in adult animation. The transition itself, from listener to inheritor, is fairly unusual. It also means Cleveland's voice now carries a slightly different texture in newer episodes than it did in the older ones. Most viewers adjusted, some did not. That is kind of how recastings always go. Easter egg number 47. Adam West, the actor, voiced Mayor Adam West on Family Guy from his first appearance in season 2 in 2000 until his death in real life on June 9th, 2017. The character is a fictionalized version of West himself, presented as the deeply weird mayor of Quahog, prone to talking to his suit and waging war on people he believes are stealing his water. Here is the bit that I find quietly lovely. MacFarlane has said that he deliberately avoided making Batman references in the character. West was famously typecast as Batman after the 1960s television series, to the point where it actively damaged his subsequent career, and MacFarlane went out of his way to give Adam West a role that did not lean on the Batman thing. The character is mad, but he is not Batman mad. He is his own specific kind of mad. So Family Guy gave Adam West a long-running secondary career playing a different kind of weird character. It was, in a small way, an act of respect dressed up as a joke. Easter egg number 48. After Adam West died in real life, the Mayor Adam West character was eventually written out of the show. He was replaced by Mayor Wild West, voiced by Sam Elliott, starting in the season 19 episode, There's a New Mayor in Town. Sam Elliott has one of the most distinctive voices in American film. His delivery is slow, low, gravelly, completely unlike Adam West's slightly wobbly delivery. So the show essentially replaced one extremely recognisable voice with another extremely recognisable voice, but in a completely different register. They did not try to hire someone who sounded like Adam West. They hired someone who sounded nothing like him on purpose. The new mayor is a different character with a different vibe. It is a fairly graceful way of acknowledging that you cannot replace the original, so you might as well not try. You bring in a new voice for a new character and let the show keep going. Easter egg number 49. Peter's boss at the Pawtucket Brewery was, for a long stretch of episodes, a character called Angela. Angela was voiced by Carrie Fisher. Yes, that Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia. From Star Wars, she voiced this fairly minor recurring character on Family Guy for years. Fisher passed away in December of 2016. The character of Angela was eventually written out following her death. Most casual viewers had no idea Carrie Fisher was on Family Guy at all, partly because it was a fairly small role, and partly because Fisher's voice as Angela does not particularly call attention to itself. It is just a slightly tired middle-aged woman in an office, but it was her, and the show quietly retired the character out of respect after she died. There is something genuinely sweet about that, given what we covered earlier about the Star Wars trilogy parodies. Fisher had a foothold in Family Guy in two completely different ways. Easter egg number 50. The personification of death appears in Family Guy multiple times. He is a recurring character, and the original voice of death was Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald, as his deadpan dry comedy persona, voicing the personification of death on a cartoon, is one of the most quietly perfect casting decisions in television history. The role was eventually taken over by Adam Carolla, but the original death was Macdonald, and you can still hear those early appearances in older episodes. Macdonald died in 2021. He famously kept a private cancer diagnosis from almost everyone, including some of his closest friends in comedy. So in retrospect, there is a slightly unusual layer of sadness to the fact that one of the funniest comedians of his generation had been voicing the Grim Reaper for years on a cartoon nobody really thought of as serious. Sometimes the casting was perfect for reasons nobody knew at the time. Easter egg number 51. Bonnie Swanson, Joe's wife, is voiced by Jennifer Tilly. Joe is voiced by Patrick Warburton. So the Swanson household is vocally one of the most distinctive couples in animation. Tilly has one of the most recognisable speaking voices in the entire profession. High, breathy, almost cartoonish on its own, before she even adds a character on top of it. Warburton has the opposite. Deep, resonant, slightly wooden in the best possible way. The two of them as a married couple shouldn't quite work voice-wise, and that mismatch is part of what makes the Swanson family fun to watch. The casting team essentially put two voices in a room that would not naturally pair and let the chemistry do the rest. Warburton, by the way, has been Joe since 1999 with no recasting. Tilly came in slightly later in season 2. Both of them have been doing it for over 2 decades now. There is no plan for either to leave. Easter egg number 52. This one is a deep cut for animation nerds. Phil Lamar is credited among the voice cast on the very first episode of Family Guy, Death Has a Shadow, according to TV Maze. Lamar is one of the most prolific voice actors of his generation. He played Marvin in Pulp Fiction, the bloke who gets accidentally shot in the back of the car. He voiced Hermes Conrad in Futurama for the entire run of that show. He voiced Samurai Jack. He has been everywhere, and he was apparently in the Family Guy pilot. The role itself was small enough that most people never registered it, but the credit is real. So if you ever wonder whether the original Family Guy cast had any future giants of voice acting hidden in it? The answer is yes. Phil Lamar was there from day one. Then he wandered off to be in literally everything else. So that is the supporting voice cast, the recasts, the tragedies, the inheritors, and a couple of properly weird hidden cameos. It is genuinely quite a deep bench of voice talent for a show that started as one bloke's art school project. Right, now we are going to talk about Family Guy in conversation with the rest of MacFarlane's animation universe. American Dad, The Cleveland Show, The Simpsons crossover, and a few of the deeper crossover gags that almost nobody clocks. So one of the things people forget about Seth MacFarlane is that he has built a small empire of animated shows that all sort of talk to each other. Family Guy, American Dad, which premiered in 2005, The Cleveland Show, which ran from 2009 to 2013, and by extension, through licensing arrangements and crossover events, he has put his characters in conversation with The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers, Robot Chicken, Futurama, and a handful of other shows. There are loads of little crossover Easter eggs scattered across all of that, and most of them sit in the background where you have to actually be looking to find them. Easter egg number 53. In the Family Guy Star Wars parody Blue Harvest, there is a scene set in the Mos Eisley Cantina, which in the original Star Wars is full of weird-looking aliens drinking quietly. In the Family Guy version, the animators replaced some of those aliens with characters from other animated shows. You can spot Roger from American Dad in there. You can spot Bender from Futurama. There is Coach McGuirk from Home Movies. The evil monkey from Family Guy itself shows up in the foreground at one point. So the Cantina, which is supposed to be a chaotic mix of weird species from all over the galaxy, has been turned into a cross-show animation convention where MacFarlane's characters are mingling with characters from completely separate properties. Whether all of those cameos were officially licensed or just visual nods is a bit unclear, but they are in the episode and they are findable on streaming. Easter egg number 54. In the two-part Family Guy event, Stewie kills Lois and Lois kills Stewie, there is a scene where federal agents burst through a door to confront the family. Look closely at those agents. Two of them are Stan Smith and Deputy Bullock, from American Dad. They are Family Guy's characters from a completely different show, doing a cameo as if they exist in the same universe. The whole point is that, technically, in MacFarlane's animated universe, they kind of do. American Dad and Family Guy both share a creator, both air on the same network for most of their runs, and have always shared writers. Putting Stan Smith into a Family Guy episode without acknowledging it is just the show's way of saying, yes, these are the same world, sort of, and we are not going to make a big deal about it. Easter egg number 55. On October 2nd, 2011, MacFarlane's three animated shows, Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, and American Dad, did a coordinated multi-show crossover event called Night of the Hurricane. The story tracked a single hurricane hitting Quahog and the surrounding region, with each show presenting its own perspective on the same weather event. So you would watch the Family Guy episode, then the Cleveland Show episode, picking up the same evening, then the American Dad episode wrapping it up. It is one of the more ambitious things MacFarlane's animation team has ever attempted. 3 half-hour episodes telling parts of the same story across 3 completely separate productions. It does not quite hold up to the Simpsons crossover that came later, but it is a properly impressive piece of scheduled animation. And it was the only time Cleveland's spin-off ever properly intersected with Family Guy in real-time storytelling. Easter egg number 56. This is probably my favourite running visual gag in MacFarlane's whole animated empire. Cleveland's bathtub, on multiple occasions across both Family Guy and The Cleveland Show, falls out of the side of his house. Sometimes Cleveland is in it, sometimes it is just empty. The bath simply detaches from the building and slides out the wall, fully filled with water, and lands in the garden. It happens so often that it has become a recurring physics joke. Cleveland's house is structurally incapable of containing his bathtub. There is even a moment in the Family Guy episode, Spies reminiscent of Us, where a missile shell falls from space and hits Cleveland's new house in Stool Bend, Virginia, causing yet another bathtub mishap. The gag survived the spin-off. It survived the cancellation of the spin-off. It survived Cleveland coming back to Quahog, and it has just kept happening. Cleveland's bathtub is one of the most reliably destructible objects in animation. Easter egg number 57. On September 28, 2014, Family Guy aired the season 13 premiere, The Simpsons Guy. It was a 44-minute crossover event with The Simpsons, written by Patrick Mahan, directed by Peter Shin. The Griffin family travels to Springfield and meets the Simpson family. The episode culminates in a brawl between Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin, which is staged like one of Peter's chicken fights with Ernie. It includes the Wilhelm scream. It includes Homer chucking Emmys at Peter, which Peter cannot retaliate to because he has not won any. It includes Roger from American Dad showing up briefly to say hello and then leaving, because by 2014 American Dad had moved off Fox and was airing on TBS. The whole thing is loaded with meta-commentary about animated television in 2014, all of it sitting inside a fairly conventional crossover plot. It is one of the most watched single episodes Family Guy has had in its post-revival run. Easter egg number 58. In The Simpsons Guy, there is a scene where someone walks past a wall. On that wall, written upside down in a small script, are the words, "If you can read this, your TV is upside down," which is obviously hilarious as a standalone gag, because the only way to read it is if your television is also upside down, in which case you have bigger problems. Fans found this within hours of the episode airing. It is a self-deprecating little visual joke that the animators slipped in for absolutely no reason, and that makes no sense in context, it is just there. A bit of background graffiti that exists purely to reward people who pause the episode and read every word on screen. Easter egg number 59. In the season 4 episode, Model Misbehavior, the Griffin family wins a boat race and ends up in the local newspaper. Lois holds up the paper to show everyone the photo. Pause it. Read the headlines underneath the main story. One of them, in the bottom corner, reads, "DVDs paused for headline joke, millions disappointed," which is a joke specifically aimed at the fans who paused the show to read background headlines. The newspaper is acknowledging that the very people reading it are reading it. It is essentially a meta-acknowledgement of the show's own audience, written into the props. American Dad used to do similar things with newspaper background gags during its early seasons, so there might also be a sibling show nod buried in there. Either way, the writers knew that someone, somewhere, was going to pause and read it. They just decided to wave at them when they did. Easter egg number 60. This one I love because it is from the cancellation era. In the season 2 episode, The Story on Page 1, Peter is flicking through a TV guide looking for a story to give Meg for her school newspaper. He finds a feature on Luke Perry. The TV guide page shows Luke Perry's photo. Underneath the photo, in tiny print, are the words, "If you can read this, Family Guy is on the air," which was, given when this episode aired, a slightly defensive bit of self-promotion. The show was being moved around in the schedule constantly, getting bumped, eventually getting cancelled. The writers slipped a little promotional message into a fictional TV guide page, essentially using the show itself to advertise the show's continued existence. It is one of those gags that is funnier in retrospect, knowing what eventually happened to the show after season 3. Easter egg number 61. Here is a long-running gag that almost nobody outside of dedicated fans has clocked. Whenever Family Guy makes a joke at the expense of Robot Chicken, the Adult Swim stop-motion animation show, created by Seth Green, Chris is the one who defends it. Every time the family takes a shot at Robot Chicken, Chris will say something positive. The reason is that Chris is voiced by Seth Green, who is the co-creator of Robot Chicken. The joke is built directly on the casting. The rest of the Griffin family is essentially mocking Chris's other show, and Chris is loyally defending it from inside the cartoon. The whole running gag works only because of who voices Chris in real life. There are also occasional jokes built around the fact that Mila Kunis, who voices Meg, has had a substantial film career. The show occasionally riffs on Bad Moms or her other roles. And similar gags get made around Alex Borstein's role in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. The show keeps a quiet eye on what its cast is doing outside of Family Guy. Easter egg number 62. On March 12, 2023, according to Entertainment Weekly's reporting, there was a brief animated scene that brought together Family Guy, The Simpsons, and Bob's Burgers in a single shared moment. 3 of the longest-running animated shows on Sunday night television, all converging in one bit of crossover content. It is a fairly small thing in the broader context of what each show is doing on its own, but it is a properly historic moment for animated television. The 3 biggest adult-leaning Sunday animation properties briefly acknowledging each other's existence in a way that does not usually happen in network television. Most viewers probably did not catch the original airing. It exists in clips online now. It is one of those things that future TV historians will probably talk about more than current viewers do. So that is the crossover universe. Family Guy in conversation with American Dad, with The Cleveland Show, with The Simpsons, with Bob's Burgers, and through cameos and visual gags with about half a dozen other animated shows. It is one of the more interconnected pockets of modern television. Right, now we're going to spend a section on what is probably the single biggest animated event in Family Guy's entire run, the Star Wars trilogy. So, Family Guy made 3 Star Wars parodies: Blue Harvest in 2007, Something 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 Dark Side in 2009, and It's a Trap in 2010. They were collectively packaged as Laugh It Up, Fuzzball, the Family Guy trilogy. Each one is a roughly hour-long shot-for-shot parody of the corresponding original Star Wars film, and they are absolutely loaded with hidden details. More so than basically any other set of episodes in the show's run. So this section is just 10 of those. Easter egg number 63. This is the first thing to understand. The Star Wars trilogy parodies were not made under fair use or as unauthorized parody. They were made with an actual licensing agreement with Lucasfilm. George Lucas gave Family Guy permission, which is why the parodies are so close to the original films, shot for shot, scene for scene, music cue for music cue. They had legal clearance to recreate the films almost exactly. Most parody works have to deliberately distance themselves from the source material to avoid copyright issues. Family Guy got permission to lean in completely, which is a fairly unusual situation in modern American comedy and is part of why those episodes feel different from the rest of the show. They are not really parodies in the legal sense. They are licensed reinterpretations. Easter egg number 64. 3 months before Blue Harvest aired, Robot Chicken, the stop-motion animation show co-created by Seth Green, had aired its own Star Wars parody special, Robot Chicken, Star Wars. It was a major success for Adult Swim. So when Family Guy released their own Star Wars parody, there was an immediate fan conversation about which one was better and who had got there first. The Family Guy episode itself acknowledges this. There is a moment in Blue Harvest where Peter and Chris have an actual on-screen debate about Robot Chicken. Peter dunks on it, Chris defends it, which is the running gag we already talked about. But in this specific case, it has an extra layer, because Chris is voiced by Seth Green, and Seth Green's other show had just put out the same kind of parody. The meta is properly stacked. Easter egg number 65. The Wilhelm scream is a stock sound effect. It is a recording of a man yelling that has been used in films since 1951, and it has become a kind of inside joke among sound editors in Hollywood, who insert it into films wherever it might fit. Family Guy uses the Wilhelm scream more than almost any other animated show. It is in Blue Harvest, when a stormtrooper dies on the Death Star. It is in Something 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 Dark Side, when a rebel is shot during the Battle of Hoth. It is in It's a Trap when one of Jabba the Hutt's henchmen falls into the Sarlacc pit. It is also in North by North Quahog during a car chase, No Chris Left Behind during a chicken fight, Long John Peter during a pirate duel, Internal Affairs during another chicken fight, Amish Guy during a roller coaster crash, Dial Meg for murder during a montage, and The Simpsons Guy during the brawl between Homer and Peter. The show's sound editors have made the Wilhelm scream into a recurring signature. Most viewers have heard it dozens of times across the show without ever realizing it was the same effect each time. Easter egg number 66. The Family Guy trilogy parodies cover the original Star Wars films, A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the original Lucas saga. The prequel trilogy, episodes 1, 2, and 3, with Jar Jar Binks and Anakin and the rest, does not really feature anywhere in the Family Guy parodies. With one tiny exception, in Blue Harvest, on Tatooine, there is a gag where the locals use lightsabers as bug zappers. One of the bugs that flies into a lightsaber and gets zapped is Watto, the slave-trading flying bug merchant from The Phantom Menace. He is the only prequel-era character to appear anywhere in the entire Family Guy Star Wars trilogy. He shows up for about half a second as a bug, getting electrocuted by a lightsaber, which is, when you think about it, a fairly direct comment on what most Star Wars fans would have been happy to do to characters from the prequel trilogy at the time these episodes were being made. Easter egg number 67. In the original direct-to-DVD release of Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story from 2005, there is a recurring gag involving an in-universe advert for wacky waving, inflatable arm flailing tubemen. It is one of those completely random Family Guy commercial parodies that has nothing to do with anything. 2 years later, in Blue Harvest, when Luke Skywalker discovers the holographic message stored on R2-D2, the message is preceded by an in-galaxy advert for intergalactic proton-powered electrical tentacled advertising droids, which is a sci-fi parody of the same tubeman joke. The gag has been quietly ported across the Star Wars universe, so an inflatable advertising mascot in 2005 becomes a tentacled hologram in 2007. Same joke, two completely different visual contexts, separated by years. The writers do not flag the callback. It just sits there, waiting for someone to notice. Easter egg number 68. In Something 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 Dark Side, there is a scene where Chris, playing Luke Skywalker, is hanging underneath Cloud City after losing his hand. He is calling out for help. He calls Ben. He calls Leia. He also calls Tom Selleck. And the show cuts to a live-action shot of Tom Selleck, the actual Tom Selleck, looking up at the sky, shrugging and going back to whatever he was doing. It is a brief, deeply random live-action insert in the middle of an animated Star Wars parody. Selleck filmed it specifically for the gag. There is also a callback to him in the more recent Season 22 Family Guy episode, A Stash from the Past, where Peter and the new mayor, Wild West, go after Tom Selleck in New York City. The show's relationship with Tom Selleck has been weirdly long-running and weirdly sincere. He keeps showing up. He keeps being game. Easter egg number 69. There is a specific moment in Blue Harvest where C-3PO, played in the Family Guy version by Quagmire, disembarks from the Jawa sandcrawler. As he leaves, he thanks one of the other droids. That droid is, on closer inspection, a 1990s dot matrix printer. C-3PO thanks the dot matrix printer for the sex, which is a fairly typical Family Guy gag in isolation. But the printer is named, in the trivia notes, as Dot Matrix. Dot Matrix was the name of the robot character in the 1987 Mel Brooks film Spaceballs, voiced by Joan Rivers. Spaceballs itself was a parody of Star Wars, and Dot Matrix specifically was a parody of C-3PO. So the Family Guy joke is a parody of a parody. C-3PO, played by Quagmire, thanking C-3PO's parody from a different parody for fictional sex. The recursion in this trilogy is genuinely a bit dizzying. Easter egg number 70. Early in Blue Harvest, there is a moment where Han Solo, played by Peter, puts on headphones and turns on a record player. The song that plays is It Might Be You by Stephen Bishop, which is a soft rock song from the 1982 film Tootsie. It has nothing whatsoever to do with Star Wars. It does not advance the plot. It is not funny in any obvious way. It is just a slightly melancholy piece of early 80s soft pop dropped randomly into the middle of a sci-fi parody. The animators apparently thought it would be funny to have Han Solo decompressing to a Tootsie ballad. They were, on balance, correct. The smaller and less explainable the joke, the funnier it tends to be in Family Guy. Easter egg number 71. The Star Wars trilogy uses Family Guy's existing cast to play Star Wars characters, and the matchups are sometimes really specific. Cookie Monster, of all people, plays the Wumper on Hoth. Herbert plays Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is a slightly disturbing casting choice when you consider Herbert's whole character. Carl, the Quahog video store clerk, plays Yoda. Mort Goldman plays Lando Calrissian. Mayor West plays Grand Moff Tarkin. Carter and Barbara Pewterschmidt, Lois's parents, play Owen and Beru Lars, Luke's aunt and uncle, who in the original films also represent a generation older than the protagonist. Ernie the Giant Chicken plays Boba Fett, which is one of the better casting jokes because both characters are essentially unstoppable, wordless killing machines. Almost every casting decision has a quiet logic to it if you stop and think about why a particular character ended up in a particular role. The writers thought about this stuff really carefully. For a comedy parody, Easter egg number 72. The Family Guy Star Wars trilogy episodes exist in two different versions. The broadcast version that aired on Fox and the uncensored version that came out on DVD, and the differences between the two are sometimes substantial. The most cited example is from Something 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 Dark Side. After Chris Luke gets his prosthetic hand, at the end, he asks if it will work. The robot fitting it gives him different responses, depending on which version you're watching. In the broadcast cut, the robot says, "It's really hard to get a compliment from you." In the DVD cut, the robot says something significantly more graphic, involving advice about practicing on a hot dog. There are dozens of differences like this across all three trilogy episodes. Family Guy has always had two versions of itself running in parallel, the network-safe version and the slightly more chaotic DVD version. And the Star Wars episodes are some of the most dramatic examples of the gap. So that is the Star Wars trilogy. Possibly the most Easter egg-dense set of episodes in the entire Family Guy run, and we have only really skimmed the surface. There are loads more. Recycled animation from PTV during the Battle of Hoth, reworked song lyrics in Dark Side, McFarlane voicing 25 different characters in a single trilogy episode. Right, now we are going to talk about background gags, the little visual jokes in the corners of frames that you only ever spot if you are pausing the show on purpose. So this section is a bit different. These are the gags hiding in the background of Family Guy. The little visual jokes drawn into the corners of frames that you only ever notice if you pause the show on purpose. Most of these were drawn in the era before HD streaming, knowing full well that almost nobody on a 27-inch CRT television in 1999 was ever going to be able to read them. The animators put them in anyway, on the off chance someone might find them years later. Streaming and pause buttons have changed how these gags get discovered. Loads of them have only really been catalogued in the last decade or so. Easter egg number 73. In the Season 2 episode, Love Thy Trophy, there is a scene where Stewie is playing with his alphabet building blocks on the floor. Pause the shot, look at the blocks, and you can see he has spelled out the word Red Rum. That is a direct reference to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining from 1980. In that film, the young son Danny scrawls Red Rum in lipstick on a mirror, and his mother eventually realises that Red Rum, read backwards, spells murder. So Stewie, who is essentially a child plotting to murder his mother for most of the early seasons, has been spelling out the warning sign in his blocks. It is a really tidy visual joke that ties Stewie's character thematically to one of the most famous evil child films ever made. And it lasts maybe 2 seconds on screen. Easter egg number 74. Gillian was Brian's main girlfriend, across multiple seasons of Family Guy. They eventually broke up. Brian later considered her the one that got away. Most people remember Gillian for being cheerful and not particularly bright. What far fewer people remember is a small visual detail that the animators put in. Brian wears a red collar with a gold tag throughout the entire show. It is the only thing he wears. Gillian, in her appearances, wears a red necklace with a gold tag of her own. Same colour, same shape, same basic visual idea. It is a quiet design rhyme between the two characters. The implication, if you want to push it, is that Gillian and Brian share something at a fundamental level that neither of them ever quite articulates, or it is just a costume reference. Either way, the matching design choice is intentional. The animators do not do that by accident. Easter egg number 75. In an episode set during the Trojan War, the story of Helen of Troy and the wooden horse and so on, there are background shots of ancient Greek statues. Family Guy gets a lot of period detail wrong, often deliberately, but in these specific shots, the statues are not the weathered grey marble we associate with Greek statuary today. They are brightly painted, with vivid blues and reds and greens, which is historically correct. Real ancient Greek statues were originally painted in bright colours. They have only faded to the bare marble look over centuries of weathering. So the animators did the research and rendered the statues as they would have actually looked at the time the story was set, which is about the 12th century BC. It is a piece of art history accuracy in a cartoon that mostly does not bother with art history. Genuinely impressive. Easter egg number 76. There is a recurring unnamed character in Family Guy who shows up occasionally to call Peter a phony. He appears in a couple of episodes, never gets a proper name in the dialogue, and just exists to harass Peter while Peter is doing something stupid. Fans and some staff behind the show have nicknamed this character Holden Caulfield. Holden Caulfield being the protagonist of J.D. Salinger's 1951 novel The Catcher in the Rye, who famously calls everyone he disapproves of a phony. So there is a recurring Family Guy character whose entire personality is a J.D. Salinger reference, and the writers never properly named him on screen, which means the joke only really works if you have read the book, which most viewers have not, which is why he is one of the more obscure recurring jokes the show has. Easter egg number 77. Brian Griffin's first novel, in the world of the show, is called Faster Than the Speed of Love. It is a recurring plot point. Brian works on it for years, eventually publishes it, and the book becomes a long-running gag because it is, by all accounts, terrible. What is interesting is that the show keeps coming back to it. The book gets referenced in episodes years apart. In a season 23 episode, the book makes an unexpected return when Brian's writing is rediscovered and embraced by right-wing readers, becoming a MAGA bestseller. So a fictional novel introduced as a one-off gag has become a piece of long-running character infrastructure. Brian's whole identity as a frustrated writer is built around it. The animators are still drawing the same fake book cover into scenes more than a decade after they first invented it. Easter egg number 78. In one of the family yard sale episodes, the Griffins are getting rid of various pieces of household clutter. Brian has his own table at the sale. If you look closely at what is on Brian's table, one of the items is a DVD case. The cover art on that DVD case is the cover for Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story, the show's actual 2005 direct-to-DVD release. It is a piece of self-referential product placement built into the episode. In the extended cut of the scene, Lois actually criticises the film for being 3 normal episodes glued together and marketed as a movie, which is a fairly self-aware admission about the actual untold story, which was indeed 3 episodes glued together and marketed as a movie. The show is mocking its own commercial choices in the background of one of its own scenes. Easter egg number 79. In the season 1 episode, Brian Does Hollywood, there is a sequence near the end of the episode set at an Adult Film Awards ceremony. The presenter, played by adult film actor Ron Jeremy, announces the nominees for Best Original Score in an adult film. The nominees are Ron Jones, Walter Murphy, and John Williams. Ron Jones and Walter Murphy are the actual composers of Family Guy. John Williams is the composer of Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Schindler's List, and roughly half of the most famous film scores of the last 50 years. The joke is that the composers of Family Guy are nominated for Best Original Score in an adult film alongside arguably the most famous composer in cinema history. It is an inside joke for the show's music team, a fairly outrageous one, and it rewards anyone who happens to recognise the names. Most viewers do not. Easter egg number 80. In a scene where Lois is using Facebook on a computer, you can see her notifications on the screen. One of those notifications is a pending friend request from Meg. Lois has not accepted it. The implication, sitting quietly in the background of an unrelated joke, is that Meg has been sending her own mother a friend request on social media, and her own mother has been ignoring it. The Griffin family does not accept Meg in real life, and they apparently do not accept her on social media either. It is one of the most quietly devastating background gags in the entire run, and it lasts about a second on screen. You either notice it or you do not. Easter egg number 81. In the season 7 episode, I Dream of Jesus, Peter discovers that Jesus Christ has been working at a record shop in Quahog. Jesus eventually ends up driving Peter around. The car has a license plate. The license plate reads WWID, which is a joke on WWJD. What would Jesus do? The slogan that was on bumper stickers and bracelets across America in the 1990s and 2000s. From Jesus' own perspective, the slogan would obviously be WWID. What would I do? The license plate is essentially Jesus signing his own car. It is a very small gag, sitting on a prop you can barely see, that absolutely nails the joke if you happen to catch it. Easter egg number 82. In one of the Halloween-themed episodes, there is a quick visual reference involving Adam West and a Catman costume. The reference is that Adam West played Batman in the 1960s ABC series, and decades later, he voiced a parody character called Catman in The Fairly Odd Parents. So Family Guy made a subtle nod to the fact that the actor playing their fictional mayor had also played both Batman and a feline-themed parody version of Batman in 2 different shows decades apart. It is a Halloween costume joke that depends on you being a Fairly Odd Parents viewer to fully understand. The Venn diagram of people who are watching Family Guy at 9 PM on a Sunday and also remember Adam West's Catman appearance from a Nickelodeon kids show is fairly small. The writers wrote the joke for that small group anyway. So those are background gags. There are loads more. License plates, newspaper headlines, fictional book titles in libraries, signs in the background of street scenes. The animators have been hiding little jokes in the corners of frames since 1999. Most of them are still being discovered. New ones turn up on Reddit every few months. The show is basically a bottomless puzzle box for fans who like to pause and look. Right, now we are going to talk about the episodes you cannot easily watch. So the next 10 are about Family Guy episodes that you cannot easily watch, the banned ones, the pulled ones, the censored ones, and a couple of legal disputes that nearly took entire episodes off the air. Family Guy has always pushed at the boundaries of what network television will allow, and sometimes Fox has decided to push back. These are the casualties. Easter egg number 83. The season 8 finale was an episode called Partial Terms of Endearment. It dealt with abortion. Lois agrees to be a surrogate for an old friend. The friend dies in a car accident, and Lois and Peter have to decide what to do with the embryo. The episode took a fairly direct stance on the issue, which Fox decided made it untenable for US broadcast. The episode was refused by Fox and never aired on the network in America. It eventually aired on the BBC internationally in the United Kingdom. To this day, the episode is not on Hulu or Disney Plus as part of the regular Family Guy streaming run. The only way to officially watch it in the United States is to buy the DVD set that includes it. So there is one episode of Family Guy, written, animated, voice acted and finished, that has effectively been quarantined from the show's home country for over 15 years. Easter egg number 84. This one had a properly weird release path. The episode was titled When You Wish Upon a Weinstein and dealt with Peter trying to find a Jewish accountant. Fox refused to air it on initial completion. It first broadcast on Adult Swim on November 9th, 2003, during the post-cancellation cable rerun era. It then later premiered on Fox itself on December 10th, 2004, more than a year after its Adult Swim debut. So the episode aired on a competing network before it ever aired on its home network, which is essentially unheard of for a network animated series. It was also reported as a banned episode in Canada via the Teletoon network. The episode now exists in slightly different forms across different markets, and the fact that Adult Swim aired it first is one of those weird historical artifacts of the show's cancellation era. Easter egg number 85. In April of 2013, the Boston Marathon bombings happened. A few days later, Family Guy was forced to pull an episode from streaming and from Fox.com. The episode was Turban Cowboy from season 11. It contained a cutaway gag in which Peter Griffin runs over a group of marathon runners with his car, and a separate scene involving Peter accidentally detonating a bomb. After the real bombings, an edited hoax clip was made online that combined those two scenes to make it look as if Family Guy had predicted the attack. The clip went viral. The show's official streaming versions were pulled in response, partly to avoid distress and partly to stop the misleading edit from circulating further. The episode came back later, but for a stretch of time, you could not legally watch Turban Cowboy anywhere. The bombing reshaped what was, in context, just an unfortunate coincidence in animation timing. Easter egg number 86. The unaired rough pilot of Family Guy was for over 25 years considered lost. It was the very early version that MacFarlane pitched to Fox and that informed the eventual season 1 production. It was never officially released. Then in 2025, the pilot leaked online. Fans got their first proper look at the version of Family Guy that almost was. The animation style is rougher. The character designs are slightly different. Peter looks a bit different. Brian's design is less polished. The Griffin household feels less developed. Some of the voices are different. It is a glimpse of an alternate history Family Guy that nobody outside of Fox had seen since 1998. The leak itself caused a fairly big online conversation about preservation and the question of how many other lost pieces of animation are sitting in network vaults somewhere waiting to be rediscovered. Easter egg number 87. Back in 2005, Family Guy aired a joke where Stewie runs through a shopping mall yelling, "I have escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement." It was a quick throwaway gag in a larger sequence. 12 years later, in 2017, public allegations against Kevin Spacey emerged, and that joke suddenly looked very different. MacFarlane has said in interviews that he did not write that specific line, and that the rumour about Spacey had to be explained to him before the joke went on air. The implication is that the writer's room had heard whispers that were not yet public, and they slipped the joke into the show because they thought it was funny in a knowing way. There is a sober reading of this where the joke is actually quite dark, and a more cynical reading where the show was complicit in keeping a public secret quiet for over a decade. Both readings are valid. The episode aired in 2005. The line is still there. Easter egg number 88. During the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike, production on most American television shut down. Family Guy was no exception. But Fox, controversially, aired 3 episodes that had been completed at an earlier production stage, but had not gone through MacFarlane's final voice mixing and approval. The episodes went out on television without their creators' sign-off. MacFarlane publicly condemned the decision. He said it damaged his relationship with Fox, and he made it clear he did not consider those episodes properly finished. They are still part of the show's broadcast history, but they exist in a slightly compromised state. There are 3 Family Guy episodes out there that the show's creator considers unfinished, and they aired anyway because of a labor dispute he was actively supporting. Easter egg number 89. In 2007, the comedy legend Carol Burnett sued Family Guy. The lawsuit was over a parody character based on her, who appeared briefly on the show. Burnett alleged the parody crossed legal lines and was actionable. Family Guy's defense was that the parody was protected speech under the First Amendment and qualified as fair use. The judge agreed with the show. The case was dismissed under fair use protections. It was, at the time, one of the more public legal battles the show had been involved in, and it set a small precedent for how parody works in modern animated comedy. Burnett was not happy about it. The character was not removed from the episode. The legal verdict stood, Easter egg number 90. In season 3, Family Guy aired a song called I Need a Jew. It was sung by Peter and revolved around stereotypes about Jewish accountants. The melody was a parody of When You Wish Upon a Star from Pinocchio. The publishing company that owned the rights to When You Wish Upon a Star, Born Cupton, filed a legal complaint over the parody. The dispute played out in trade press and never quite became as big a public lawsuit as the Carol Burnett one did, but it was a real legal hurdle for the show. Family Guy has been on the receiving end of multiple lawsuits across its run. There was also a separate case involving a parody of Art Matrano's magic act in Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story, which was also dismissed under fair use. The show keeps almost getting itself sued. It almost never actually loses these cases. Easter egg number 91. Most Family Guy episodes exist in 2 distinct versions: the censored broadcast version that aired on Fox, and the uncensored version that was released later on DVD and Blu-ray. The differences can be substantial. Lines get rewritten, visual gags get extended, profanity gets restored. Sometimes entire scenes are cut for broadcast and put back in for home video. We touched on this earlier with the Star Wars trilogy. It applies to most of the show's run. So when you stream Family Guy on Hulu, you are usually getting a slightly trimmed version of the episode, not the original cut. The DVD and Blu-ray versions are the closest thing to what the writers actually wrote. Some viewers genuinely prefer the trimmed broadcast versions because the pacing is tighter. Others prefer the uncensored cuts because they're closer to the show's intent. Either way, there are essentially 2 Family Guys running in parallel across the show's history. Easter egg number 92. This one is properly obscure. At some point in the show's run, an episode involving cannabis-related themes was banned by the Venezuelan Broadcasting Authority. The episode in question was about Brian's attempt to legalize marijuana, which was a season 7 storyline. The Venezuelan ban was a small story at the time, mostly covered in trade press. International bans are part of the show's history that almost no American viewer ever hears about. Family Guy gets cleared, censored, edited, or outright banned in different countries on a fairly regular basis. The Venezuelan ban is just one example. The show is broadcast in dozens of territories, and what you see in Quahog when you stream Family Guy in Caracas is not necessarily the same as what someone in California is seeing. Different countries have different sensitivities, and a show that has been on the air this long has accumulated quite a lot of small international incidents along the way. Some episodes get fully aired in some territories and never aired at all in others. Some get aired with specific cutaway gags trimmed out. There have been occasional regional disputes about specific characters or jokes that did not really survive translation. Most of this never makes the news in the country where the show was actually made. The American audience just sees Family Guy as Family Guy, end of story. The international audience has a slightly more complicated relationship with the show, depending on where they happen to live, and which broadcasting authority happens to be running their local network. The cannabis episode in Venezuela is just the most cited one. There are loads of others sitting in trade press archives that almost nobody has ever bothered to translate. So that is the banned and pulled episodes. Loads of complicated history sitting around the edges of the show that almost nobody who casually watches Family Guy will ever bump into. Anyway, now we are heading into the home stretch. Recurring gags, long-running jokes, and a few of the deepest cuts in the show's history. Okay, last bit. The next 8 are the recurring gags, the long-running jokes, and a couple of the deepest cuts in the entire show. Some of these have been quietly building since season 1, some of them only became significant years after they first showed up. And one of them is genuinely one of my favourite bits of late-run Family Guy, which we will get to right at the end. Right then. Easter egg number 93. The giant chicken is one of Family Guy's most iconic recurring characters. The chicken fights are some of the most elaborate set pieces the show has ever animated. Through windows, onto trains, into building sites, sometimes lasting 4 or 5 minutes of uninterrupted action. What loads of casual viewers do not realise is that the chicken has a name. He is called Ernie, and he has a family. He has a wife called Nicole, who appeared way back in the chicken fight episodes, and had a fairly polite dinner with Peter once before another fight broke out. And in the season 23 episode, The Chicken or the Meg, it is revealed that Ernie has a son. The son is called Nugget, which is a properly committed bit of poultry naming. And in that episode, Meg ends up dating Nugget. So Ernie and Peter are now technically about to be in-laws, or they would be if Meg had not eventually beaten up Ernie and decapitated him at the end of the episode. The giant chicken now has a properly developed family tree, and most of the original chicken fight viewers from 2000 have absolutely no idea. Easter egg number 94. This one is a structural joke. Peter falls over. Peter grabs his knee. Peter starts hissing in pain. The hiss goes on and on. It keeps going past the point where it is funny. It keeps going past the point where it is annoying. It keeps going past the point where you start wondering if the show forgot to cut. And then somehow it loops back around into being funny again, just because it has gone on for so long. The gag has been a Family Guy staple since the early seasons. It is a deliberate test of the audience's patience, a comedy bit that works specifically by overstaying its welcome. It is essentially the Family Guy version of Sideshow Bob and the Rakes from The Simpsons. A joke that is funny, then irritating, then funny again, then funny in a completely different way. The writers know exactly what they're doing. They have used the technique elsewhere too. Anything that goes on too long in Family Guy is almost certainly being held there on purpose. Easter egg number 95. This is genuinely one of the cleverest stalling devices in modern animation. Whenever the show needs to fill time, or pad out an episode that came in short, or just buy a couple of minutes between plot beats, Family Guy will sometimes cut to actual archival footage of the country singer Conway Twitty. The footage is real. It is a genuine performance from Twitty, who died in 1993. The show licenses it and just plays it. No setup, no punchline, just Conway Twitty in concert, performing for an audience that has nothing to do with anything. And then the show cuts back to the plot. It is technically a cutaway gag, but it is not really a joke. It is the show using a real dead country singer as comedic punctuation. The first time you see it, it is properly disorienting. By the 3rd or 4th time, it just becomes part of the language of the show. The whole thing is a fairly bold use of the cutaway format. Most cartoons would not pause for 90 seconds of unrelated archival footage. Family Guy does it routinely. Easter egg number 96. In December of 2013, Family Guy did something properly drastic. They killed Brian. The episode was called Life of Brian. Brian gets hit by a car. He dies surrounded by the family. The whole thing is played seriously. And then, in the next episode, the family gets a new dog. He is called Vinny. He is voiced by Tony Sirico, the actor who played Paulie Walnuts in The Sopranos. Vinny is essentially a slightly less sophisticated, slightly more openly emotional version of Brian. He bonds with Stewie. He becomes part of the family. For 2 episodes, Vinny was the actual Griffin family pet, and Brian was actually dead. Then in Christmas Guy, the very next episode, Stewie went back in time and saved Brian, undoing the death and erasing Vinny from the timeline. Tony Sirico himself died in 2022, which means the small handful of episodes Vinny appears in are now genuinely the only animated work he ever did in that role. Vinny is a real character who briefly existed. The fan backlash to Brian's death was massive, and the show never really did anything that drastic again. Easter egg number 97. There is a recurring stock cutaway Family Guy uses dozens of times across its run. Whenever something goes wrong, the show will sometimes cut to footage of the Hindenburg disaster, with the famous radio broadcast by Herbert Morrison playing. The one where he says, "Oh, the humanity." It is one of the most quoted pieces of audio in 20th century broadcast history, and Family Guy uses it as a comedic exclamation mark. The same footage, the same audio, the same emotional register, inserted as a punchline whenever anything mildly inconvenient happens. It is, on one level, a fairly tasteless joke about a real disaster that killed 36 people. It is also, on another level, an example of how the show has weaponized public domain archival footage as comedic shorthand. The Hindenburg cutaway, the Conway Twitty cutaway, the various other recurring archival inserts, they are all part of the same trick. Use real, recognizable footage as a joke. Repeat. Eventually, the audience laughs at the rhythm rather than the content. Easter egg number 98. The Season 8 episode, Brian and Stewie, which aired on the 2nd of May 2010, is the most acclaimed thing Family Guy has ever made. It is a bottle episode. The entire 22 minutes takes place inside a single locked bank vault. There are only 2 characters on screen. There are no cutaway gags. There is no music score. There are no commercials. Fox aired it commercial-free. The plot involves Brian and Stewie getting locked in a bank vault overnight and being forced to actually talk to each other. Properly talk about their lives, their fears, what they mean to each other, what would happen if the other one died. It is the show stripping away every single one of its usual tools and just letting the 2 characters exist together for half an hour. It also, in passing, contains one of the most famously gross moments the show has ever produced, but the rest of the episode is genuinely tender. It is the closest thing Family Guy has ever made to a piece of prestige drama, and it proves that the show can absolutely do that whenever it decides to. It just usually decides not to. Easter egg number 99. The 300th episode of Family Guy is called Send In, Stewie, Please. It aired in season 16. It is another bottle episode, even more so than Brian and Stewie. The entire episode takes place in the office of a child psychologist called Dr. Cecil Pritchfield. Stewie is in therapy. There are no cutaway gags, no B-plot, no slapstick. Just a baby and a therapist talking for 22 minutes. And over the course of that conversation, Stewie drops his English accent. He admits, in his actual American child's voice, that the persona he has been performing his entire life is fake. The accent is fake. The villainy is fake. The whole British evil genius character he has been playing is a coping mechanism. He built it because the alternative, being a regular kid from Rhode Island, was too frightening to face. He talks about being lonely, he cries, he briefly considers letting the mask drop permanently. And then at the end of the episode, he puts the accent back on and rebuilds the walls. The therapist has a heart attack and dies in front of him, and Stewie does not call for help because the only person who has ever seen the real version of him cannot be allowed to live and tell anyone. It is genuinely one of the most quietly devastating pieces of animation the show has ever made. A 300-episode payoff for a character who started as a homicidal cartoon baby. Most viewers had no idea the show could do that. Easter egg number 100. So the biggest Easter egg, if you want to call it that, is structural. We talked earlier about MacFarlane and the morning of September 11th, 2001. The hangover, the wrong departure time, the missed gate. The flight he was meant to be on. We do not need to go through it again. But what is worth sitting with at the end of all this is what that single morning produced downstream. Every episode of Family Guy from season 4 onwards, every Star Wars parody, every chicken fight, every Brian and Stewie bottle episode, every Quagmire catchphrase, American Dad, The Cleveland Show, MacFarlane's 3 Oscar nominations as a host, his film career, his albums, his charity work, the careers of Mila Kunis, Seth Green, Alex Borstein, and the whole supporting cast, the Blackstone Valley Tourism Council walking tour, the over 450 episodes Family Guy has now produced, the 4 more seasons it has been renewed for. All of it traces back to one bloke being late for one flight on one Tuesday morning in Boston. That is genuinely the Easter egg at the centre of everything. The whole Family Guy universe exists, in the form it currently exists, because of a clerical error and a hangover. The show is still on the air today, more than 2 decades later, because someone wrote down the wrong time on a piece of paper. There is no neat way to wrap that up. It just is what it is. So that is 100. Right then. We are nearly done. 100 Easter eggs. We did it, or rather, you did it if you're still awake, which, statistically, most people listening to this will not be, and that is genuinely fine. That is the whole idea. The thing I keep coming back to with Family Guy, having spent the time it took to research all of this, is just how much of it is hidden in plain sight. You could watch every episode of the show 3 times through, and still miss most of what we covered tonight. The show is, in some ways, designed for the half-watched second viewing. The first time, you are following the plot. The second time, you start to notice the music. The third time, you start to read the license plates and the newspaper headlines and the books on the shelves in the background. There is always something else to find. 25 plus years on, fans on Reddit are still cataloguing new background gags from old episodes. The show keeps quietly rewarding people who pay attention. I think that is part of why it has endured the way it has. Family Guy is not really a show about its plots. The plots are mostly disposable. The cutaways are the cutaways. The chicken fights happen, and then end, and then happen again. What sticks is the texture. The voice cast. Walter Murphy's orchestral arrangements, doing serious work in the background, while everything on screen is being ridiculous. The little details the animators kept slipping in, knowing nobody would notice for years. The fact that Stewie spelled Redrum in his blocks once, and the writers never bothered to mention it. The fact that the bathtub keeps falling out of Cleveland's house, for absolutely no reason. The fact that the Griffin family lives at an address that was sometimes 31 Spooner Street, and was once, very briefly, 725 Spooner Street, and nobody at Fox ever went back to fix it. If you fell asleep around Easter egg number 20, you are not alone. If you made it to 100, then I do genuinely admire your commitment, and you're now the kind of person who knows more about Family Guy production trivia than 99% of the people who have ever watched it. Either way, I am glad you spent some of your evening here. I am thinking about doing a part 2 of this at some point. Family Guy has produced enough Easter eggs across its run that you could probably do 5 of these videos and still not hit the bottom. Band scenes, deeper voice cast, trivia, more of the music side of the show, the prediction stuff that we did not really get into tonight, the various spin-off episodes, loads more in there. So if there is interest, that is on the cards. No promises, we will see. For now though, Quahog is still out there, somewhere in a fictional Rhode Island that does not really exist anywhere except on Sunday nights, on Fox and on Hulu, and on the Disney Plus International Hub. Peter is still being Peter. Stewie is still pretending to be British. Brian is still writing a novel that nobody really wants to read. Meg is still being ignored. Chris is still doing his Buffalo Bill impression. Lois is still holding the whole thing together. The Drunken Clam is still open. Pawtucket Patriot Ale is still being brewed. The Giant Chicken is somewhere out there. almost certainly waiting for an excuse to fight Peter again. And Walter Murphy's theme song, that old swing number that has been playing on Sunday nights since 1999, is still playing somewhere right now, on some screen, on some sleeping person's phone, in some dimly lit room, the way it has been playing more or less continuously for over 25 years. I will be back next time. Sleep well.